Hello, sorted friends. I wanted to post an additional video with some more thoughts now that I've had another day or two to think about what I've posted and the material that I've tried to develop. Again, I'm coming at this as a technique in isolation, and eventually it'll develop into a more full-fledged technique, including how to enter scenarios in which it'll be useful and how to apply this tactically. Assuming that this has any martial merit. I certainly find as a martial artist, there are many points in time in which we find things which are very artistic and beautiful and look interesting, but may lack martial merit. Meaning, they're too slow, they don't pack enough punch, they don't do anything that's tactically useful, or they take too long to do. This may be the case with what I've been demonstrating and developing. Time will tell, and people who have better athletic and fight ability than me may be able to develop further and show that it's either useful or not. That said, one of the comments I made in one of my previous videos, I believe the third video, was describing this may be a Fiore version of a Krumphau, a crooked cut, which is found in the KDF or the Lichtenauer through Meyer tradition. And I wanted to post a video saying I don't think that's actually true. Not necessarily true anyways. And specifically, this may do some of the same things as a Krumphaw, but it does it through somewhat different body and sword mechanics. And I wanted to demonstrate why. Now, all of these videos are on a playlist on YouTube, and in that playlist I have appended videos from two sources I find to be reputable and have good interpretations for what Krumphaw is. First is from my friend Walker Skaggs at Rocket City HEMA in Huntsville, Alabama, and he's showing it from the KDF or Lichtenauer tradition in the late 14th century, early 15th century. And then the second is from Meyer School Hammerborg. I do not know anyone at Meyer School, but I understand that they are reputable and their interpretations are generally regarded as worth understanding. And this shows Meyer, which is now in the 16th to early 17th century, 150 years difference roughly, going from the knightly nobility of the Holy Roman Empire to the burghers who are now training for sport and town defense. Either way, you can look at both videos and decide if what I'm showing you is accurate. Now to recap, I'm going to give a very simplified and not complete coverage of what a Krumphaw looks like within the German sword systems spanning that 150 years. This will be very simple. I'm not going to show every position from which you can perform a Krumphaw or every position or every situation in which you would do it. I'm also only going to concentrate on one side for clarity. And this, again, is just for simplification of trying to describe what I'm trying to do and saying why the Krumphaw is not exactly the same thing. You can look at those other videos for reference and to confirm that what I'm saying matches existing interpretations from reliable and credible sources. Now, again, what are we doing? Again, pay attention to the little mark on my sword. We're transitioning from Finestra, rotating the hand about the hilt, into Finestra as we shift our body weight with a volta stabile. This kind of motion. Now, what is a Krumphaw? A Krumphaw is called the crooked cut, and is the way to take the sword. If this is our center line, it is a way to take the sword across the center line, interrupting, cut, thrust, other types of sword actions, so that you can do a follow-on action. Typically, there are different points to aim at, and you can see the other videos I've referenced in the playlist for more details on that. But a couple details here. I've got my friend Billy Pell here. Billy is actually on this line. His extension, the staff, is along this line. The camera lens may have a fisheye effect, which makes it look pointed in a different direction. And the staff is bowed a little bit. But it is in line on this line. If I look straight down at it, it's pointed at me. Krumphaw is typically done coming from one position, one guard or another, with a step offline. As you're stepping offline, you're coming across in a thumb grip. Knuckles on top. Thumb grip of the sword, and it's really cranking with the left hand down. That cranking motion we do have in common with what I'm trying to show. But look at the other details. again, this is the common scenario, not necessarily every single scenario with a Krumphaw. But starting in a position, step off line, thumb grip, crank with the left hand, and we're coming across the sword. You see that there's also this angle, more or less. You know, my center line is pointed here. This angle is pointed across both his center line and my center line, forming, you know, whatever shape. At some consideration of speed, again, I'm not the best demonstrator of this, as this is not part of the arts I normally study. And you can see it provides a good defense for something that's roughly in line with me, or I'm expecting to come in line with me. Pushes it out of the way and maybe goes over the sword to another target. So what's different with what we're doing? For one, I do not know of any sources that just demonstrate a thumb grip within Fiore's arts. It may be that some people do it, and it may be that it's useful, but it's not demonstrated anywhere. And it may even be that it's reasonable that a person of good intelligence of that time in our history would do such a thing. But I don't do it as part of my art. It's just not a thing that I do, particularly wearing protective gear and in armor. And again, being in armor is a part of the art that I study. They also have the knuckles high. And if you remember, in our prior videos, part of the issue with that knuckles being on that side is that to get to Finestra, it requires that extra turn along the longitudinal axis, or the long axis of the sword. So we came up with shifting the right hand to prevent that rotation. Shifting the hand. That precludes, to some extent, the use of a thumb grip, because the thumb is not quite in the right place anymore. Instead, the palm of the hand, is lightly supporting the hilt. The sword is actually going to move about this rotational axis here, this kind of center of balance, and I'm cranking with the left hand. So the right hand is mostly kind of guiding the sword in this space and keeping it from just totally falling. It is easy for me to suspend the sword right here. That's nothing. The sword is balanced around this point. I can support it there all day long. I don't need that hand. Similarly, up here. Well, my wrist is not in the most comfortable position. That's easy to do. The sword is pretty well balanced. This hand is mostly guiding things. Even with a Krumphaw, it's mostly guiding things, because the sword is held out here and you're mostly forcing with your left hand. So the Krumphaw is also somehow rotating around this axis, primarily. It's a common sword dynamic. But again, for what I'm demonstrating and what I think should work, our hands will be here, not here. That's a difference. Second difference, as I discussed, was the stepping off line. Maybe it can be argued that a Krumphaw can work from different mechanics, body mechanics, footwork. This seems to be a common denominator among all the things I saw in those videos posted, and how I've seen Krumphaw employed. Even on the other side, is generally a step-off line. And for good reason. You're getting out of the way of your opponent's line of attack to protect yourself. No argument from me. But again, within what I'm trying to demonstrate, we're not stepping offline. We're moving our body offline using a volta stabile to shift my body's momentum from one side, the center of my body's mass from one side to the other. And again, the rod is on line with this line here, and so you can see how my body mass is shifting and getting on and off line. So, you should be able to see the center of my body mass is weighted to here, right on the center line between myself and this rod. As I shift over, my body mass is now about a foot away from that line. And I'm charged on this side. If this is a thrust coming straight in, or cut aimed at this, I may be able to intercept it and block it or void it, because I'm now over here. Now, does that mean that I should step with that movement? As you can see, so I have a Krumphaw which strikes the blade and the opponent this range. I'm striking more this range. I think there are many things that we can do to work through this technique and see what works better. Maybe we can extend it, the blade in that direction a little more, and maybe it's not meant for all of these situations. So tactically, this may work similar to a Krumphaw in that it intercepts something coming across or down the center line, but it does it through different mechanisms. So I don't think it's a Krumphaw in Fiore. I think it's just a coincidence that they behave in similar fashions. Now, I also want to point out a couple other things which may not be as immediately obvious. I do not know, because I do not study the Lichtenauer and KDF and Meyer arts, I do not know how the Krumphaw works well in armor or not. As you may know, in armor you have gauntlets, sometimes with flares, sometimes not, and you have vambraces, and you have other things, including protection on the chest, which impedes movement. I do not know to what extent this movement into a Krumphaw is impeded by armor. I suspect it's not that great, because there seems to be a good distance between the hands. There seems to be a good distance between the arms until they make contact here, even on the other side, which is even more open. So perhaps Krumphaw works well. And it's using basic step off line, cut across the center line techniques. This should all work in armor. How about what I'm doing? Well, today I do not have my armor out where I can get to it and put it on. I do have harness. In fact, I'll be at a demonstration later this week in harness, and I intend to at least try to pull some of this stuff off. But I'll be in front of a crowd, and I don't want to look too silly. But I think anybody can reasonably see that I am not a person of normal athletic build. I very much have a dad bod, even though I'm not a father, in profile. And I say this only to mean that if you take off 60, 70 pounds from me, I would have an athletic build, much less of a dad bod. But that 60, 70 pounds is roughly the equivalent of a harness. So if I'm able to perform these motions without the encumbrance of harness, someone with my level of strength, my general athletic ability, without harness should be able to perform this when they're in harness. Now, factors to consider: chest plates and coats of plates and such will impede arm motion, as well as the additional weight from the vambraces, the upper cannon, spalders, and whatnot. This will all be impeded. But I see enough distance that a reasonable amount of room and play is likely. The arms are open. And I think there's a reasonable amount of play. And again, that shifting of weight is along the center axis of my body, especially if I, instead of hunching over as I may have been doing on camera, standing up a little firmer, a little taller. That's perfectly reasonable to do in armor. Again, I weigh roughly what someone in more athletic shape may weigh in harness. And I can do this very easily, even a little deeper, more of a lunge. In fact, I regularly do such a thing in some of my other martial arts. So we'll end it there for today. But just a few more, that was just a couple more thoughts in trying to distill what it is I'm trying to do and what it may or may not be. Again, I don't believe that this is necessarily a Krumphaw found in Fiore. I think that this is a somewhat different action, particularly when it comes to spear. But we'll let time tell, and we'll see where we wind up as an overall discussion in a few weeks' time. Thank you.